The fires had been burning for 3 days straight. Commander Jacob Pierce stood by the window of the tall building and watched orange flames eat through the farmlands below. His team worked behind him, trying to save as many people as they could. The alien ships had come without warning. They appeared in the sky like a swarm of metal insects and started destroying everything. "How many enemy ships are up there?" Jacob asked. His eyes stayed fixed on the burning fields. Lieutenant Karen Hughes checked her screen. 17 warships, sir. Big ones. Our defenses lasted about 20 minutes before they broke. The aliens were called Krellians. Everyone in the galaxy knew about them. They were brutal creatures who enjoyed conquering weaker worlds. The humans had tried to talk to them. They had tried to surrender. The Krellians ignored every message. They just wanted the humans gone. Down in the underground shelters, 10,000 people huddled together in fear. Parents held their children tight. The building shook every time the aliens fired their weapons from space. Children cried. Adults whispered prayers, hoping someone out there would listen. Danny Morris, the communication officer, shouted from his desk. "Sir, we're getting distress calls from New Providence and Harmony Station. They're under attack too." Same aliens, same methods, 3 colonies attacked in one day. The Krellians were not just raiding anymore. They wanted to wipe out every human in this part of space. "Contact Earth Command," Jacob ordered. "We need help now." Karen shook her head slowly. "Sir, Earth is 6 weeks away even if they fly at top speed. We don't have 6 days left." "Sue, Doc." Jacob knew she was right. The colony's protective shields were failing. The power was running out. He looked at the faces of his crew. These people were not soldiers. They were farmers and engineers and teachers. They had come to this world to build homes and grow food, not to fight in a war. Another explosion rocked the settlement. Somewhere in the medical wing, Dr. Lisa Grant worked hard to save the wounded. Her hands stayed steady, even as the walls shook around her. In the refugee shelters, Pastor Alan Brooks walked among the scared colonists. He was not a military man. He was just a simple preacher who had come to this planet to help people with their faith. Now he tried to give them hope when everything seemed lost. "Have faith," he told them. His own voice shook a little. "Help will come." A young mother named Claire Davis held her daughter close. "From where?" she whispered. "We're all alone out here." Alan had no answer. He just bowed his head and prayed. Up in the command center, Jacob made a hard choice. Send a message on all channels. Tell them we surrender. Maybe we can buy time to get people on the evacuation ships. But the Krellians did not want prisoners. They wanted the planet, and they wanted every human dead. Their answer came as 3 more attacks from orbit. Each blast landed closer to the main settlement than the last. Jacob felt the floor shake beneath his feet. Time was running out fast. "Sir," Danny called out. "I'm picking up something weird. The long-range sensors are going crazy. There's some kind of huge energy reading forming at the edge of the star system." Karen pulled up the information on her screen. "That's impossible. These readings say there's a ship the size of a small moon out there. Nothing that big could move through space, but something was moving. Something was coming toward them." In the shelters below, the colonists kept praying. They prayed for someone to save them. They prayed for mercy. They prayed for anyone to hear their cries in the darkness of space. They did not know that their prayers were about to be answered. But not in any way they could have imagined. The sky above the planet started to change. The stars seemed to shift their positions. A darkness spread across the heavens that was deeper than the empty space between worlds. It was not the normal darkness of space. It was something else. Something different. Something very old. Something very angry. And it was coming straight for them. The sensors began to scream with warnings. Jacob stared at the tactical display and watched reality itself seem to tear apart at the edge of the star system. The energy readings climbed higher and higher, beyond anything the instruments could measure. Whatever was approaching made the Krellian fleet look like toys. "Get me a picture," he ordered. The main screen flickered and showed the image. Every person in the command center went silent and still. It was not a ship, not like any ship they had ever seen. It was a storm, given shape and form, a rolling mass of darkness that swallowed light itself. Lightning crackled through it, but not normal lightning. This lightning was red and angry, pulsing with rage. The storm stretched across millions of kilometers of space. It made planets look small. It made stars grow dim as it passed them. "What in God's name is that?" Karen breathed out the words. The Krellian fleet noticed it too. Their ship stopped bombing the planet and turned to face this new threat. Jacob watched as they formed a defensive wall in space. Their weapons started charging with power. The aliens were getting ready to fight. They had no idea what they were facing. In the shelters below, the colonists felt something change before they could see it. The air itself seemed to press down on them, heavy with electricity. Children stopped crying. Adults looked up at the ceiling as if they could see through all the metal and stone to the sky beyond. Pastor Allen felt something he had never experienced before. It was not fear. It was awe. Terrible, overwhelming awe that made his knees weak. The storm reached the outer planets of the system and did not slow down. It moved through space like a living creature, with purpose and intelligence. As it passed the frozen gas giant on the edge of the system, that planet's clouds began to spin in response. Great cyclones formed on the gas giant's surface, reacting to this cosmic visitor. "Sir, the Krellians are opening fire," Danny reported. Jacob watched as 17 warships fired everything they had. Energy beams cut through space. Missiles streaked toward the darkness. Metal bullets fired in waves that could crack continents. All of it disappeared into the storm like small stones thrown into a deep ocean. And then the storm fought back. Lightning erupted from its depths. But this was not random. The bolts moved with exact precision. Each one found a Krellian ship. The first destroyer's shields held for maybe 1 second before they collapsed. The hull got so hot, it glowed white before breaking into pieces. The crew never had time to scream. One by one, the alien ships died. The Krellians tried to run. Their engines burned at maximum power as they tried to escape. It did not matter. The storm was faster. It flowed around them, through them, turning their mighty warships into glowing wreckage. In less than 5 minutes, the entire Krellian fleet was destroyed. The command center sat in shocked silence. Karen's hands shook above her controls. Danny had forgotten to breathe. Jacob felt his heart pounding hard in his chest as he watched the storm continue moving toward the planet. "Is it going to destroy us too?" Lisa asked from the medical bay. Her voice crackled over the speaker system. Jacob had no answer. The storm filled their sky now, blocking out the stars. Red lightning danced across its surface, lighting up the darkness with hellish light. The entire planet seemed to hold its breath and wait. And then the storm spoke. It was not sound exactly. The words appeared in their minds. In every mind on the planet, at the same time. Colonists in the shelters heard it. Crew in the command center heard it. Even the animals in the farm domes heard it in their own way. The voice was old. Old in a way that made mountains seem young. Old in a way that meant it had watched entire galaxies form and die. And it was furious. "You called," the voice said. "You prayed. You begged the sky for help." In the shelter, Claire Davis held her daughter tighter. Alan Brooks fell to his knees, with tears running down his face. Above them, Jacob steadied himself against his command chair. "We are the answer," the storm continued. "We are what comes when prayers turn to screams. We are what appears when innocent people cry out, and the heavens themselves demand justice." The storm began to pull itself together above the planet. It took on a shape, though no human eye could fully understand what it was becoming. Something huge. Something powerful, beyond measure. "You asked for salvation," the voice said. Now there was something else in it. Not just fury, but grief. Ancient. cosmic grief, for all the suffering it had seen across the ages. We have come. The darkness fell upon the planet like a wave. Every colonist felt it wash over them, but it did not bring destruction. It brought something else. A feeling of protection that was fierce and absolute, like being shielded by something that would burn the entire universe before letting harm come to them. In that moment, 10,000 humans realized they were no longer prey. They were under the protection of something far older and far more terrible than any alien empire. The storm had answered their prayers. And God help anyone who threatened its charges now. The entity that called itself the Answer hung in the sky above the planet. It was a rolling mass of darkness and lightning that broke all the rules of physics. Jacob Pierce stood at his station, trying to process what was happening. His rational mind screamed that this was impossible. His instincts told him that impossible did not matter anymore. "Sir, I'm detecting multiple Krellian reinforcement fleets entering the system," Danny reported. His voice was shaking. "Looks like they sent a distress call before we destroyed them. We've got at least 60 warships coming. Maybe more." Karen pulled up the tactical display. "They're coming in fast. 3 different directions. They're going to try to overwhelm us with numbers." But the storm in the sky seemed unconcerned. If anything, the lightning got more intense. It crackled with anticipation. "Let them come," the voice echoed in their minds. "Let them learn what it means to hunt those under our protection." The first Krellian fleet appeared at the edge of the system. These were not just destroyers anymore. Jacob saw battle cruisers, carriers, giant dreadnoughts. The Krellians had sent a full invasion force, enough firepower to destroy a dozen worlds. The fleet commander, a veteran of 100 conquests, looked at his sensor readings and laughed. 1 human colony and some kind of space anomaly. Nothing his fleet could not handle. He had faced worse odds and won. He ordered the attack. The second fleet appeared near the gas giant. The third showed up on the opposite side of the system. All 3 began moving forward. Weapons were hot. Shields were at maximum. Thousands of alien warriors prepared for battle, confident they would win. They had no idea they were already dead. The storm moved. It did not travel in any normal way. One moment it hung above the planet. The next moment, it was simply everywhere, at once. The darkness spread through the system like spilled ink, reaching across millions of kilometers in seconds. The Krellian ships found themselves surrounded by night itself. Then, the killing began. The storm did not just destroy the ships. It made them suffer. Hulls twisted and warped. Metal screamed as it bent in ways matter was never meant to bend. Ships turned inside out, exposing their crews to empty space. Others simply stopped existing. Their atoms scattered across space, like dust. In the command center on the planet, the crew watched in horrified fascination as 60 warships died. It was not a battle, it was an execution. "My God," Lisa whispered from the medical bay. "Is this really on our side?" Jacob did not know how to answer that. The entity had saved them, yes, but what they were watching was beyond violence. This was wrath on a cosmic scale, ancient and merciless. Pastor Allen watched through the shelter's observation windows. He saw the destruction and felt tears on his cheeks. He had prayed for help, and help had come. But he had not imagined it would look like this. In the old religious texts he had studied, God's actions were often terrible to see. Angels were not gentle creatures of light. They were warriors of overwhelming power. Maybe this was what humanity had forgotten. Maybe this was what real divine intervention looked like. The last Krellian ship tried to flee. Its engines burned beyond safe levels. The captain screamed orders, desperately trying to reach the jump point that would carry them to safety. The storm caught it easily, wrapping around the vessel like a fist. But this time, it did not destroy. It squeezed. The ship's hull groaned under impossible pressure. Inside, the Krellian crew felt the walls closing in. And then they heard the voice. The same one the humans had heard, but carrying a different message. Tell your empire, the storm commanded. Tell them that humanity is under our protection now. Tell them that any who raise weapons against these people will face our wrath. Tell them we are eternal. Tell them we are patient. Tell them we will remember. The pressure released. The ship tumbled through space. Systems were failing. But the ship was intact. The crew was alive. A messenger. Allowed to survive for one purpose only, to spread the word. On the planet, the darkness began to pull back. The storm withdrew from the far reaches of the system. It condensed once more above the colony world. The red lightning softened, becoming almost gentle. You are safe now, the voice told the colonists. Rest. Heal. We will remain. In the shelters, people began to breathe again. Children who had been silent in terror started to cry, finally releasing the fear they had held inside. Parents held them close, whispering that it was over. They were safe. Claire Davis looked up at the ceiling, toward the entity that had saved them all. Thank you, she whispered. She felt, rather than heard, the response. A wordless acknowledgement. A sense of ancient sorrow that such thanks were necessary. That the universe was a place where innocent people needed protection from those who would harm them. Jacob sat down heavily in his command chair. His hands were shaking. Status report, he managed to say. Karen checked her systems. All Krellian forces destroyed or fled. No new damage to the colony beyond what we already had. The entity is maintaining position in high orbit. Power levels are stable. We're secure. For now, Danny added quietly. Jacob nodded. The Krellians would send word back to their empire. Other species would hear about what happened here. The galaxy would learn that humanity had found a protector. But what would that protection cost them? What did they owe this entity? What did it want in return? As if hearing his thoughts, the voice spoke once more. Softer now. Almost sad. We want nothing from you. We are the answer to prayers long forgotten. We are what comes when the universe itself grows tired of injustice. We do not bargain. We do not trade. We simply protect those who call out in their darkest hour. A pause, and then words that sent chills down every spine. But know this. We have seen civilizations rise and fall. We have watched species reach for the stars and burn in their own ambition. You are young, humanity. Young and fragile and precious. Do not waste this gift. Do not become the thing you feared. The storm pulsed once, and everyone felt it. A warning, a promise, a hope. They had been saved. But salvation came with responsibility. The question was, could humanity live up to it? 3 days after the storm had destroyed the Krellian fleets, the planet began the slow process of rebuilding. The fires were out. The wounded were being treated. The dead were being mourned. Life, as it always did, found a way to continue, but nothing would ever be the same. The entity remained in orbit, a constant presence that the colonists could feel even when they could not see it. Some found it comforting. Others found it deeply unsettling. Jacob Pierce found it both. He sat in his quarters, trying to write a report for Earth Command. How did you explain what had happened here? How did you put cosmic intervention into military terms? He had tried a dozen different versions, and all of them sounded insane. A knock at his door pulled him from his thoughts. Come in. Pastor Alan Brooks entered, looking older than he had a week ago. The events had aged them all. Do you have a moment? Commander? Jacob pointed to a chair. Please. I could use the distraction. Alan sat down, quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. I've been talking to the colonists, trying to help them process what happened. Some of them are calling it a miracle. Others are terrified. A few are asking questions I don't have answers to, such as what that thing really is, where it came from, why it helped us. Alan looked directly at Jacob. And Whether we should trust it. Jacob leaned back in his chair. What do you think? I think it saved 10,000 lives. I think it destroyed an invasion force that would have killed us all. I think when we were on our knees with nowhere else to turn. It answered. Alan paused. But I also think it's dangerous. Not to us, maybe, but to anyone who threatens us. Did you see what it did to those ships? That was not just defense. That was rage. Righteous rage, Jacob offered. Is there such a thing? Alan asked quietly. Or is all rage just rage, regardless of the cause? Before Jacob could answer, his communication panel made a sound. Karen's voice came through. Sir, you need to get to the command center. Now. Jacob and Alan hurried through the corridors. When they reached the command center, they found the entire crew staring at the main display. On the screen, Danny had pulled up long-range scans of the nearby star systems. What am I looking at? Jacob asked. Karen pointed to the display. 3 more colonies under attack. New Portland, Summit Station, and Riverside. Different species doing the attacking, but the pattern is the same. Overwhelming force. No warning. No mercy. How long until they're overrun? Jacob asked. New Portland has maybe 6 hours. The others, less. Jacob felt his chest tighten. More people dying. More prayers being screamed into an uncaring universe. He looked out the window, toward where the storm waited in orbit. As if sensing his thoughts, the entity stirred. The darkness rippled. Lightning flickered across its surface. And then it spoke, not just to Jacob, but to everyone on the planet. We feel them, the voice said. We hear their cries, just as we heard yours. Can you help them? Jacob asked out loud. We can, we will. A pause. But you must understand. We are not infinite. We cannot be everywhere at once. For every world we protect, another may fall, while our attention is elsewhere. The universe is vast, and cruelty is woven into its fabric. Jacob felt the weight of that statement. An entity of incredible power, and even it had limits. But there is another way. The storm continued. You could help them. You could become the answer for others, as we were for you. In the medical bay, Lisa Grant stopped what she was doing and listened. In the shelters, Claire Davis held her daughter close, understanding what was being asked. Throughout the colony, 10,000 people heard the offer. We can give you the means to protect yourselves and others. We can share our strength in a form you can use. You will not be gods, but you will not be helpless prey either. You can stand against the darkness. At what cost? Pastor Allen asked. His voice carried through the command center's speakers. Only this, the storm replied. That you use this power only to protect, only to defend. The moment you become the aggressor, the moment you use this gift to conquer rather than save, we will take it back, and we will be disappointed. The last word carried a weight that made everyone shudder. They had seen what disappointment from this entity might look like. Jacob looked at his crew. Karen met his eyes and nodded. Danny did the same. Lisa's voice came through the speaker. If we can help those people, we have to try. Throughout the colony, the answer was the same. They had been saved. Now it was their turn to save others. We accept, Jacob said. The storm descended, but this time, it did not feel threatening. The darkness flowed into the colony like liquid night, gentle and careful. It touched each person. And as it did, something changed. Not their bodies, but something deeper. Colonists felt strength flowing into them. Knowledge. Understanding of technologies that had not existed moments before. In the engineering bay, mechanics found themselves suddenly understanding weapon systems that could have come from 1,000 years in the future. Pilots felt new instincts awakening, knowing how to fly ships they had never seen. Lisa discovered medical techniques that could heal injuries thought impossible to treat. The colony's defense systems began to transform. Weapons appeared that could punch through shields like paper. Shield generators hummed to life with power reserves that broke the laws of physics. The transport ships in the hangar bay shifted. Armor plating grew across their hulls. Engines upgraded to speeds that should have torn them apart. The planet was becoming something new. Not just a colony, a fortress, a sanctuary, and its people were becoming guardians. "The colony's under attack," Jacob said. His voice was stronger than before. "Can we reach them in time?" Karen checked her newly enhanced systems. "New Portland is closest. If we leave now, we can make it with an hour to spare." Jacob looked at his crew. They were farmers and doctors and teachers, but they were also survivors. They had faced the abyss and lived. Now they would help others do the same. "All volunteers to the hangar bay," he ordered. "Karen, you have command here. Danny, Lisa, Alan, you're with me. We're going to save some lives." In orbit, the storm pulsed with something that might have been approval. Or pride. "Go," it told them. "We will watch over this place, and when you return, we will be here." The ships launched from the planet, streaking into the darkness. They were no longer running from a fight. They were racing toward one. The prey had become hunters, and the galaxy was about to learn what humanity looked like when it stopped being afraid. The transport ship, renamed the Guardian's Hope, dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of New Portland's star system. Jacob stood on the bridge, his hands steady on the controls of a vessel that had been transformed into something between a warship and a miracle. "Sensors are picking up the attacking fleet," Danny reported from the tactical station. "Looks like Vexorian raiders. 20 ships, heavily armed. They're bombarding the colony's shields." Through the window, Jacob could see the planet below. New Portland, home to 8,000 human colonists. Families, children, people who had come to the frontier looking for a better life, just like those on his planet. "Time until their shields fail?" Jacob asked. 40 minutes, maybe less," Danny replied. Lisa stood at her station, watching the ship's systems. The enhancements from the entity were holding. Power levels that should have been impossible remained stable. Weapons that should not exist hummed with readiness. Pastor Allen, working the communications array, opened a channel to the colony below. "New Portland. This is the Guardian's Hope from Haven's Edge. Hold on. Help has arrived." The response came quickly, a mixture of hope and disbelief. "Haven's Edge? We heard you were destroyed. How can you be here?" "Well, long story," Jacob said. "Right now, just keep those shields up. We're going to handle the raiders." He switched to the ship's internal communication. "All hands. This is Commander Pierce. We've been given a gift, and now it's time to use it. Remember what we were taught. We protect. We defend. We do not become the monsters we fight. Understood?" A chorus of acknowledgments came back. In the ship's hold, 50 colonists, who had volunteered for this mission, prepared themselves. They were not soldiers, but they were something else now. Something the galaxy had never seen before. Guardians. Jacob brought the ship around, speeding toward the Vexorian fleet. The raiders noticed the approach and broke formation. Several ships turned to intercept. They probably thought it was a foolish rescue attempt. 1 ship against 20. They had no idea what was coming. The first raider opened fire. Energy beams cut through space. The Guardian's Hope did not dodge. The beams struck the shields and simply disappeared, absorbed by technology that made Vexorian weapons look primitive. Jacob returned fire. The weapon the entity had given them was unlike anything in human arsenals. It did not just damage ships. It disabled them. The beam struck the raider, and systems began to fail. Weapons went offline. Engines cut out. Life support held, but the ship was helpless, drifting. "Target neutralized," Danny reported. "No casualties. The crew is alive," Jacob nodded. That was the point. They were not here to kill. They were here to stop the killing. Another raider attacked, then another. Each time, the Guardians' Hope responded with precision and restraint. Ships were disabled, not destroyed. Crews were spared, but rendered harmless. Within 10 minutes, half the Vexorian fleet was drifting in space, alive but defeated. The remaining raiders tried to flee. Jacob let them go. They would spread the word, just as the Krellian survivor had. Humanity was no longer easy prey. With the immediate threat gone, Jacob brought the ship into orbit above New Portland. The colony's shields were flickering, but holding. He opened a channel. New Portland, this is Guardian's Hope. The raiders are gone. You're safe. The response was crying. Laughter. Prayers of thanks. Jacob felt something tighten in his chest. This was why they had accepted the entity's gift. This feeling. Right here. Lisa began working with the colony's medical staff, sharing the advanced techniques the entity had given her. Danny worked with their defense teams, helping them upgrade their systems. Alan spoke with their community leaders, offering guidance on what had happened to Haven's Edge and what it meant for all humanity. Over the next hours, the Guardians' Hope became a mobile base. They helped repair damage from the raid. They shared food and medical supplies. They listened to the colonists' stories and offered comfort where they could. And they kept watch, shields up, weapons ready, making sure no one else would threaten this world. Back on Haven's Edge, Karen Hughes watched the mission from the command center. Around the colony, life continued under the watchful presence of the entity. Children played in the rebuilt farm domes. Workers repaired damage from the Krellian attack. Life, stubbornly, wonderfully, went on. The entity spoke to her, its voice gentle. They did well. Lo. Con. They did, Karen agreed. Will there be more attacks? More species testing us? Yes, the storm replied. Word is spreading. Some will fear you now. Some will respect you, and some will see this as a challenge. Proof that they must strike harder, faster, to overcome your protection. So this is not over. It will never be over, the entity said, and there was ancient sadness in its voice. The universe is not a peaceful place. Life struggles against life. Species compete for resources, for territory, for survival. We have changed the balance, but we have not ended the conflict. Karen looked up at the sky, toward where the darkness waited. Then why bother? If it never ends, why fight? Because each life saved is worth the effort. Because each moment of peace, no matter how brief, is precious. Because the alternative is to give up, to let cruelty rule unopposed. The entity pulsed, lightning flickering through its form. We are old, Karen Hughes. We have seen galaxies be born and die. And in all that time, the one constant is this. There are those who will always stand against the darkness, even knowing they cannot defeat it forever. Those people, those species, those moments of courage, they are what make existence worthwhile. At New Portland, Jacob stood on the colony's rebuilt command tower, looking up at the stars. The Guardian's Hope was ready to leave, prepared to answer the next call for help. Summit Station and Riverside had already been saved by other ships from Haven's Edge. More vessels were being prepared. More volunteers were training. Humanity was spreading across the stars not as conquerors, but as protectors. The prey had indeed become hunters, but they hunted those who preyed upon the innocent. Commander, Alan said, joining him on the tower. The colony wants to hold a service. To give thanks. They've asked if you'll speak. Jacob shook his head. I'm no preacher. That's your job. Actually, Alan said with a slight smile. I think you've been preaching just fine. Every time you spare an enemy crew instead of destroying them. Every time you help rebuild instead of simply moving on. Every time you show mercy when you have the power to show wrath. He paused. You're teaching people what it means to have power and use it wisely. That's the best sermon I know. Below them, the colonists gathered in the main square. 8,000 people, who had been hours from death, now alive and safe. They looked up at the Guardian's hope in orbit, at the volunteers who had risked everything to save strangers. Jacob thought about the entity, about its gift and its warning. Power had to be used carefully. Strength had to serve compassion. The moment they became the aggressor, the moment they used their abilities to conquer instead of protect, they would lose everything. It was a hard balance to maintain. But it was necessary. Tell them, Jacob said to Alan, that what happened here is what humanity should be. Not the strongest, not the most advanced, but the ones who show up when others call for help. The ones who answer prayers with hope instead of despair. Alan nodded. I will. As the sun set on New Portland, casting long shadows across the repaired colony, the service began. Voices rose, in thanks, in celebration, in hope. The Guardian's hope remained in orbit, a silent guardian. And far across the system, other colonies received a message broadcast on all frequencies. A simple statement that would echo across the galaxy. Humanity stands with the innocent. Attack those under our protection, and face the storm. Call for our help, and we will answer. We are no longer prey. We are no longer hiding. We are guardians now. The message reached 1,000 worlds. Some heard it with relief, others with fear, and a few, the worst of the galaxy's predators, heard it as a challenge. Let them come, Jacob thought. We'll be ready. Days turned into weeks. The Guardian's Hope and other vessels like it traveled from colony to colony, answering distress calls, stopping raids, protecting the innocent. Word spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Humanity had changed. They were no longer the weak species that could be bullied and conquered. They had become something new. Some alien empires, the wise ones, took note and adjusted their policies. They left human colonies alone. They even reached out with offers of trade and alliance. These species understood that humanity was now a power to be respected. Other empires, the proud and the foolish, saw the situation differently. They saw humanity's new strength as an insult, a challenge to their dominance. They began to plan, to scheme, to gather their forces for a strike that would prove once and for all who ruled the galaxy. The Krellian Empire, humiliated by their defeat at Haven's Edge, was chief among these. Their war council met in the great hall of their homeworld, plotting revenge. They would not make the same mistake twice. This time, they would bring overwhelming force. This time, they would not fail. But they did not know about the storm that watched, the ancient entity that had taken humanity under its protection, the answer that had come when prayers turned to screams. And they did not know that the storm was not alone, that across the vast cosmos, other entities stirred, other ancient powers that had watched younger species rise and fall for eons, powers that had their own reasons for taking interest in this upstart species called humanity. The galaxy was changing. Old alliances were being questioned. New powers were emerging. And at the center of it all stood humanity, young and fragile and precious, protected by something far older than the stars themselves. The question was no longer whether humanity would survive. The question was, what humanity would become. 6 months after the storm first appeared above Haven's Edge, the Krellian Empire launched its grand offensive. 300 warships, the largest fleet they had ever assembled. They came not just to destroy humanity, but to send a message to the entire galaxy. No one defied the Krellian Empire and lived. The fleet appeared at the edge of human space, near a cluster of 5 colonies. The Krellian High Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, confident in victory. They had studied the humans. They knew about the entity. They had developed new weapons, new strategies. This time would be different. Begin the assault, he ordered. The fleet moved forward as one massive wall of metal and firepower. They targeted all 5 colonies simultaneously, spreading their forces to prevent the humans from concentrating their defense. It was a sound strategy, one that had won them 100 wars. But they had made one critical mistake. They assumed the entity could only protect one place at a time. Above Haven's edge, the storm stirred. Lightning crackled across its surface, but not with anger this time. With something else. Amusement, perhaps, or pity. They do not learn. The voice spoke to the colonists below. They think numbers will overcome us. They think strategy will save them. They do not understand what we are. Jacob Pierce, now promoted to Admiral and Commander of humanity's Guardian Fleet, stood in the command center. "What will you do?" "We will show them," the entity replied. "And we will show the galaxy. Once and for all." The storm expanded. Not slowly, but in an instant. One moment it hung above Haven's edge. The next moment, it filled the entire sector of space. Millions of kilometers across. Billions. It surrounded all 300 Krellian ships, like a blanket of night. The Krellian High Commander stared at his sensors in disbelief. "That's impossible. Nothing can be that large. Nothing can move that fast." He was wrong on both counts. The storm did not attack immediately. Instead, it spoke. Its voice reached every ship in the Krellian fleet, every warrior, every officer, every soldier who had come to destroy humanity. "You were warned," the voice said. "You were given mercy. One ship was allowed to flee, to carry our message. You chose to ignore that message. You chose to believe your weapons and your numbers would be enough." The High Commander tried to order his ships to fire, but no weapons would activate. No systems would respond. The storm had already seized control of every vessel in the fleet. "Now you will learn," the entity continued. "Now you will understand what it means to face the answer." The storm did not destroy the ships, not this time. Instead, it did something far more profound. It showed them. Every Krellian warrior in the fleet suddenly experienced something they had never felt before. Empathy. They felt the fear of the colonists they had tried to kill. They felt the pain of families torn apart by their raids. They felt the grief of children who had watched their parents die under Krellian bombardment. Every act of cruelty their empire had committed across the centuries flooded into their minds at once. It was not torture. It was truth, unfiltered and absolute. The High Commander fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. Around him, his crew did the same. On every ship in the fleet, hardened warriors wept for the suffering they had caused. For the first time in their lives, they understood what they had become. "This is what you have done," the storm told them. "This is the pain you have spread across the stars. This is why we stand against you." The entity released its hold on the ships. Systems came back online. Weapons became active again. The Krellians could have fired. They could have continued the attack. Not one ship fired a single shot. Instead, the High Commander opened a communication channel. His voice was broken, humbled. "We surrender. Unconditionally. The Krellian Empire will cease all hostilities against humanity and its allies. We will withdraw from conquered territories. We will make reparations for our crimes. Will you?" the storm asked. "Or will you simply retreat, lick your wounds, and return when you think we are distracted elsewhere?" "No," the High Commander said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. "No, we cannot. Not after what you have shown us. We understand now. We understand what we were, what we must never be again." The storm pulsed once, considering. Then it spoke again, softer now. "Very well. Return to your empire. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that the age of conquest is over. Tell them that those who prey upon the innocent will answer to powers far beyond their comprehension." A pause. "And tell them that redemption is possible, even for the worst of you. But it must be earned through action, not words." The Krellian fleet turned and limped away. 300 ships that had come for war now leaving in peace. They would return to their empire and everything would change. Some Krellians would reject the High Commander's message. But most would listen. Most would remember what they had felt. And slowly, painfully, the Krellian Empire would begin to transform. On Haven's Edge, celebrations erupted. The threat was over. Not just pushed back, but truly ended. Humanity was safe. But Jacob did not celebrate. He stood in the command center, looking up at the entity that protected them. What you did to them, showing them all that pain, was that not torture? It was truth, the storm replied. They inflicted that pain on others without understanding what it felt like. Now they understand. Is knowledge torture? Or is ignorance the greater cruelty? Quote, Jacob had no answer. Over the following months, the galaxy transformed. The Krellian Empire's change sent shockwaves through every civilization. If the mighty Krellians could be humbled, could be changed, then anything was possible. Other empires took note. Some reformed willingly, not wanting to face the storm's judgment. Others continued their old ways, believing themselves immune. They learned otherwise. Humanity's role evolved as well. The Guardian ships continued their patrols. But now, they did more than just fight. They mediated disputes. They provided humanitarian aid. They helped rebuild worlds ravaged by war. They became a force for good in a galaxy that had known too much evil. Claire Davis, the young mother who had huddled in fear during the first attack, now captained her own Guardian ship. Her daughter, grown now, served as her communications officer. Together they answered distress calls across the sector. Lisa Grant established medical stations on a dozen worlds, training others in the advanced techniques the entity had shared. She saved thousands of lives, and trained thousands more to do the same. Pastor Alan Brooks traveled from colony to colony, not just preaching, but listening, helping people process the rapid changes, reminding them of their responsibility to use their power wisely. Danny Morris became the head of humanity's early warning network, ensuring that no colony would ever again face attack without warning. And Karen Hughes took command of Haven's Edge, transforming it from a simple farming colony into the heart of humanity's guardian network, a symbol of what they had survived and what they had become. Jacob, now an old man, stood on the observation deck of Haven's Edge and looked up at the stars. The entity was still there, ever watchful. But it was quieter now, less visible. Humanity had learned to stand on its own. Will you ever leave? Jacob asked the storm. When you no longer need us, the voice replied. When the galaxy has learned its lessons. When cruelty is no longer the default response to difference. A pause. We are patient. We can wait. And if we fail, if we become what we once feared, then we will be disappointed. The storm said simply, and we will withdraw our gift. But we do not believe you will fail. You have shown us something we have not seen in many ages. What's that? Hope. Real hope. Not the naive belief that everything will be fine, but the determined conviction that even in darkness, light can be found. That even the worst can change. That even the weak can become strong without becoming cruel. The entity pulsed with warmth. You asked for help in your darkest hour, and we answered. But you did not become dependent on that help. You used it to help others. That is rare. That is precious. Jacob smiled. We learned from a good teacher. No, the storm replied. We simply reminded you of what you already knew. The goodness was always in you. We merely gave you the strength to express it. As the sun set on Haven's Edge, Jacob watched families walk through the rebuilt streets. Children played without fear. Adults worked without looking over their shoulders. Peace, hard-won and carefully maintained, had come to this corner of the galaxy. The prayers that had once been screams of desperation were now whispers of gratitude. The sky that had answered, with storms darker than fear, now watched over them with quiet protection. Humanity had learned that salvation comes with responsibility. That power must serve compassion. That being strong means protecting the weak, not exploiting them. And across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, others were learning the same lessons. The age of conquest was ending. The age of cooperation was beginning. It would not be easy. There would be setbacks. There would be those who resisted change. But the tide had turned. The balance had shifted. And at the center of it all, young and fragile and precious, stood humanity. No longer prey, no longer victims, but guardians of the innocent, protectors of the weak, and proof that even in the darkest night, dawn would come. They had prayed on their knees for help, and the sky had answered with storms darker than fear. But from that darkness had emerged light. From that fear had come courage. From that desperation had come hope. And the universe, vast and terrible and beautiful, was better for it. The storm watched. The storm waited. The storm remembered. And when the next cry for help echoed across the stars, the answer would come again, always.